if we have to simulate the entire universe to create the ornaments and the two of us, how are we supposed to engineer life
Yeah, that's
in the lab?
this goes back to sort of the critique of the RNA world. I think one of the problems, and I'll get to answering your question, but I think this is kind of relevant here.
Hmm.
One of the problems with the RNA world, when we test it in the laboratory, is how much information we're putting into the experiment. We specify the flasks, we make pure reagents, we mix them, we take them out, we put them in the next flask, we change the pH, we change the UV light, and then we get a molecule. And it's not even an RNA molecule necessarily, it might just be a base, right? And so people don't usually think about the fact that we're agents in the universe making that experiment, and therefore we put a little bit of life into that experiment. Um, because it's part of our biological lineage in the same sense that a cup or I am a part of the biological
You
lineage. The
mean our
experiment is,
ideas are injecting life
yes,
to the
and the constraints that we put on the experiments, because those conditions wouldn't exist in the universe on planet Earth at that time without us as the boundary condition, right? So,
even though
um,
we're not actually adding any actual like chemistry or biology that it could be identified as life, are the constraints we're adding to the experiment, the design of the experiment.
yeah, you can think of the design experiment as a program. You put information in. It's an algorithmic procedure that you design the experiment, and so the origin of life problem becomes one of minimizing the information we put into physics
Right.
to actually watch the spontaneous origin of life.
Can we have so can is it possible in the lab to have an information vacuum then? So like
If we could, we would. That would be amazing. I don't know. That's a good question for more for Lee.
yeah, you guys, by the way, for people who don't know, Lee Cronin is you guys are colleagues,
Yeah.
and I've gotten the chance to listen to the two of you talking. There's great sort of chemistry, and you're brilliant brainstorming together, and there's a really exciting community here of brilliant people from different disciplines working on the problem
Yeah.
of life, of complexity, of I don't know, whatever the words fail us to describe the exact problem we're trying to
Right.
actually understand here. Intelligence, all those kinds of things. Okay, so what from a lab perspective? So Lee, I guess would you call him a chemist? No,
I
what
think
is he?
by training he's a chemist, but I think most of the people that work in the field we do have lost their discipline. That's why I couldn't answer your question earlier.
Okay,
I don't know what you call him.
yeah.
I don't know what I call myself. I don't know what I call any of my friends.
So
Um,
why is it so hard to create? And it's an interesting question to create biological life in the lab. Like from your perspective, is that an important problem to work on to try to recreate the historical origin of life on Earth, or echoes of the historical origin?
I think echoes is more appropriate. I don't think asking the question of what was the exact historical sequence of events and engineering every step in the process to make exactly the chemistry of life on Earth as we know it is a meaningful way of asking the question.
Right.
And it's a little bit like, um, if since you're in computer science, like if you know the answer to a problem, it's easier to find a program to specify the output, right? But if you don't know the answer a priori, finding an algorithm for, like, say, finding a prime or something, it's easy to, verify it's a prime number. It's hard to find the next prime. And the way the original life is structured right now and the historical problem is the answer and you're trying to retrodict it by breaking it down into this set of procedures where you're putting a lot of information in. And what we need to do is ask the question of how is it that the rules of how our universe is structured permit things like life to exist, and what is the phenomena of life? And those questions are obviously essentially the same question. And so you're looking essentially for this missing physics, this missing explanation for what we are. And you need to set up proper experiments that are going to allow you to probe the vast complexity of chemistry in an unconstrained way with as little information put in as possible to see when does information actually emerge? How does it emerge? What is it? And part of the sort of conjecture we have is that this physics only becomes relevant, or at least this is my personal conjecture, and it's sort of validated by this kind of theory experiment collaboration that we have working in this area. That this, sort of, I made the point about like gravity existing everywhere, right? But when you study an atomic nucleus, you don't care about gravity. It's not relevant physics there, right? It's weak. It doesn't matter. And so this idea that there's kind of a physics associated with information, for me, it's very evident that physics doesn't become relevant until you need information to specify the existence of a particular object. And the scale of reality where that happens is in chemistry, because the combinatorial diversity of chemical objects that can exist far exceeds the amount of resources in our universe. So if you want it, you can't make every possible protein of length 200 amino acids. There's not enough resources. So in order for this particular protein to exist, and this protein to exist in high abundance, means that you have to have a system that has knowledge of the existence of that protein and can build it.
So existence comes to be at the chemical level. So existence is best understood at the chemical level.
It's most evident. It's a little bit like nobody argues that gravity doesn't exist in an atomic nucleus. It's just not relevant physics there.
So the physics of information
is everywhere. It exists at every combinatorial scale, but it becomes more and more relevant the more set of possibilities that could exist, because you have to specify more and more about why this thing exists and not the infinite. It's not an infinite set, but the set of undefined set of other things that could exist.